Hello, everybody. We're back for another installment of Alien Contacts and the Life of Bob. This is January 16th, 2019. I'm your host, Paul Power, and we have the amazing and wonderful Robert Nelson.
Thank you for the compliment.
This is number 19. Episode 19 of this series.
Right.
Take it away.
There for a moment I thought I had done a time slip back to 2016. Excuse me. Before I go into the next phase of alien contacts, which is with the reptilians in this case, I'm going to step back to the late 1970s. Sometimes when I would be meditating in those days, I would see this guy levitating, sitting in the air with his legs in the lotus position in an old cave that looked like there were parts of it that were carved into different faces and different structures, different designs. And I felt like I knew this dude. I didn't know why. But he'd look at me kind of under the eyebrow like at times. Sometimes he'd be making strange movements with his hand in the air, and I don't know what the symbols were that he was making. Then one day I picked up the name Yarid. He was my Atlantean son. He was a sorcerer, a wizard. He worked for the Atlantean temple government. If he had refused to do so, he would have been used in laboratory experiments to try to find out how he did the things that he did. You see, that way the government, if they could duplicate the process with just anyone, they wouldn't need the wizards. So he had a choice. Work for us one way or work for us another way, be the lab rat. And he chose to do his service to his culture and country, so to speak, to Atlantis, which he would call Atlan. I was his dad. I died 2 months before his birth. Actually, I was murdered 2 months before his birth.
What year would this be about?
This would be about, probably about 11,000 years ago or so.
Oh, that's all?
Yeah. Near the end of Atlantis.
Okay.
I had different lives in Atlantis. I don't remember much about, if any. I do remember this one, only I guess because it was a little bit more recent. I was not a really great person in that life, and it certainly wasn't a great life. My dad in that lifetime, not my present lifetime dad, but different dude, two-timed my mother. And I killed him with a family knife. And then I took off running. I came across a teacher by the name of Ashkenaz. I think he was sort of like what we would call today Persian Atlantean descent. He was teaching a different view of things. He was a spiritual teacher. And I remember correctly, there were about 10 of us in his group. But as things developed, I learned different metaphysical skills from him. I also met this woman I fell in love with, and 2 months before she gave birth, to Yared. My name was Arid, like A-R-E-E-D, Arid. My chest was burned out with a crystal that had stored a day's sunlight in it by friends of my dad who didn't like the fact that I killed my dad and wanted to avenge him, and did. I was wrong for what I did, I admit it. No way around it. You see, some of my lives have been what I call schlock lives, and some of them have been crummy lives. Evidently, there were different lessons in those lives I felt that I had to experience. I'm not saying what I did was good. I'm not proud of it a bit. As best I can remember, according to what Yared has said on tapes that I've heard and watched videotapes as well, the family name was something like Adderkin or Adderkane. He was an espionage agent for the Atlantean Temple government. For example, he had skills where if an Atlantean ship docked at a foreign port, cats going off that ship, whatever they saw, he would see back in Atlantis or Atlan. Interesting dude, also a drunkard. There are times that I began channeling him in the late 1970s, and I have once in a while, even the present day. Anytime he comes through, he's always asking Paul what he has to drink.
That's right.
He prefers ale. I'm not a drinker. I really don't drink
He loves
hardly at all.
dark beer. He loves dark beers.
Yeah. I think you. What was it you told me one time? You gave him a regular beer and you said something about baby's milk or something like that.
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, whatever. But since this deals with another, I can't say extraterrestrial, but non-terrestrial, he did make mention one time that he helped to bring down aircraft or skycraft that belonged to certain extraterrestrials that did not have permission to be over certain areas. He wove some kind of spell that brought them down. I'd like to know how he did it. Anyway, moving more to present day times. I think I've already told you, when I was living in Lakeland before I came here, shortly before I came here, the reptilians were making some big changes. They were changing over from an empire to a republic, an alliance. Now, their kind of republic is not like ours. It's more like the old Soviet republic. But they are making progress. They evidently have killed off a number of the fallen one dark families that they originated from. By now, perhaps I think they've killed all of them that they can find. And they've taken a direction in their culture to be more in line with what we would say the ways of God. And there's a lot I have learned about them. There's a lot I still don't know. They're highly militaristic. By the age of 14, a reptilian kid is considered to be an adult. And by that time, this is male or female, by that time, if that kid hasn't already been in a military academy type school, then they do go into it. And a while after that, they go into what we would refer to as boot camp. But their boot camp is very extensive, very exhaustive, and lasts quite a while. But then their lives are extremely long compared to us. in boot camp, if you're a reptilian, you become a quintessential soldier. You also become the equivalent of a general practitioner doctor. You see, in their system, you don't have to yell for a medic if you're injured. You are the medic. And every soldier around you is a medic. After boot camp, you can do one of two things. You can either further your military career and go into specializations, any direction you want, and their military, shall I say, machine, in the sense of their military structure, will pay your way. Or you can drop out. It's frowned upon. Most reptilians try not to drop out. But if they do drop out, then they get service jobs or desk jobs, paper pusher we would call it. And they never advance in any specializations unless either they can pay for it or they have family that can pay for it. One of the reptilians I met back when I was around, I think I was either late 4 or early 5 years old. His reptilian name starts off with Ga Ray and then it keeps on going. And don't ask me to remember it because I can't. He told me to call him Gary. I first met him on board all I can call it is a space city, not a space station. As a little boy, it looked like pictures of New York City, but with a lid on it. Here you got the ground, here you got the lid on top, and all the buildings, so to speak, stacked together close to each other with all the pretty lights and everything. In between those, in between the ground and the lid or top. So when I first met Gary, I remember he looked really tall, but he would. I was a little kid. I was 4 years old or maybe early 5, like I said. And he took me by the hand and walked me around the space city in some places. To me, it was amazing. Sure wasn't like anything I was aware of, nothing like I had at home. The floor was all carpeted, kind of a heavy-duty carpet, a real strong weave. It wasn't nice and plush and soft or anything like that. The floor was sort of a grayish tan. The walls were more like cream to white, between cream and white. In one case, I saw what looked like, the only thing I could call it was Christmas lights. But back then, you see, we didn't have tubular Christmas lights like we do now with the little, I guess, LEDs in them that light up and they're in the form of a tube. But there was a room that looked just like that, with a whole bunch of these, as I call them, Christmas lights. They were different colors and some were blinking, some weren't. And I wanted to go in there to look at the Christmas lights. And Gary had to explain to me, no, you can't go in there because you would get very sick and maybe die. And I didn't understand. And he said, well, you know how magnets work? And I said, yes. And he said, it's like that. You can't see the power that's there, but it could make you very sick or even kill you. And he said it'd be sort of like poison. Nowadays I understand he was talking about something with a radioactive element to it. Three of the walls of that room were solid and thick. One wall was clear but real thick, about 6 or 7 inches thick. I don't know if it was glass or what it was. As a kid I thought of it as glass, but it was real thick. I saw what I thought were toys of a lot of different bright, pretty colors. It reminded me of when I would go to a store with little bins of toys that you could see if you walked through the store. Only I didn't understand these toys. They didn't seem to have moving parts. They were rectangular, made of something like plastic. I didn't know exactly what I was looking at. Bright colors. I asked if I could take one home with me. And Gary said no, those had to be shipped out within a matter of hours. Well, I would see those toys again. In the 1980s, when I had one of the old big disc players, we're not talking DVDs, we're talking the big video disc, and my video player went bad at one time, and I found out it was the laser reader in the machine that had gone bad. And when they opened it up and pulled it out for me to look at, it was identical to what I was seeing on board ship back in what would have been the early 1950s. There was also what looked like a piece of brass. It was about 10 inches long, about 1.5 inches in width, probably about 1/2 inch at most in thickness. I guess it was metal. It felt like metal, and it looked like brushed brass. There were indentations, circular indentations in this piece. I asked what it was, and Gary reached over and picked up what I thought was a very clear marble, only bigger than a regular marble. It would fit in one of those indentations. And I asked what it was, and he said what we do is we take this, stack different marbles along the line of it, and then we hook it up to another device, and we can speed communications up way faster than the speed of light. Okay. At one point I had to go to the doctor. I remember telling Gary I didn't like doctors because I always got hurt when I went to them. I was always getting shots because I was always sick all the time. Like I said, Earth was toxic to me. And he told me not to worry, that there wouldn't be anything painful, there wouldn't be anything to happen that would hurt me or upset me or harm me in any way. That probably I'd end up sleeping through it. Well, there was a dark room and you couldn't see your hand in front of your face. Gary put me up on this table. It was slick. Slick surface. Kind of cool, not real cool. The sides went up a little bit on the sides of the table, at least where I could put my hand over and feel one of the sides. And I lost consciousness. I don't know to this day what happened. I have no idea. When it was over, Gary picked me up, took me by the hand again over to a malt shop, of all things. Designed sort of like malt shops on Earth, but far more modern. More like what we would see in the 1960s. Okay. I asked for chocolate ice cream. They didn't have it. I asked for vanilla. They didn't have it. They did have a white, almost like really fine shaved ice, and it was extremely sweet and fresh tasting. I asked for Coca-Cola. They didn't have it. But they gave me a cup of water that was, the only thing I've tasted similar to it is here with the water filters that we have in this house. And on the next one of these, we're going to take it the next step, what happened there on the space station, but then after that we're going to bring it up to more modern times.